Hello everyone, today is February 14th, that's right, Valentine's Day of the year 2012. And today's episode is Terran It Up, match number 5, Help Me, Help You. Very cheesy, but look at my original title of Terran It Up. In which today we're going to go over 2 replays in which we're going to see a Terran player winning. And then he talked a little bit about how he did good things, but there's still some areas that he can improve on. And then we're going to watch a Terran player losing, and he's going to say well, I did this really good, and then I messed up, and I don't know what I did. And actually, those are backwards. We're going to watch the Terran losing first, and then the Terran winning, since a lot of people don't think you can learn anything from games you've won, and I think those are probably the most important games to review. And we'll go over those reasons later on in the show. And after we do those 2 replays, I'm going to open up one of my favorite kind of custom maps in which I can practice build orders. And we're going to talk about the pros and cons for that. And also, when I review that tape, what am I looking for? And then we'll open up the floor to questions, concerns of, well, how do I start this, and so on and so forth. And we're going to go actually a little bit into the theory crafting kind of part, even though it's not Thursday. But when we get there, you'll know. So first of all, we're going to jump into this game between Screamer, this red Zerg, and Soviet. I think that these players are around the platinum level. I can't remember exactly where I drew this from. I watched the replay a couple days ago, and I pulled it from Team Liquid. He posted some questions of how to stop meter harassment and what to actually do. And what we're actually going to find out is a lot of the concerns actually aren't revolving around meta, but that's just the classic fallback of metas are stupid and blah 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 blah. And that's not true. So we're actually going to point out, and we're going to just stop it here so I can explain a little bit more. We're going to talk about what he made comments on, what he thought was really good. We're going to make his comments on what he plans on improving in the future, and then I'm going to give my 2 cents on what he should be working on. He does do some really good things, and then he does some not so good things. So we're going to kind of address all those issues and then just kind of move on from there. So back to the action. What Soviet is going to do, I believe, is Rax expand, which is totally fine in TVP. It's growing a little bit more in popularity rather than the Reactor Hellion, which is probably the more common thing to do. And if you heard very closely, I said common rather than standard, as standard I think is getting thrown around way too much. I mean, StarCraft, oh no, he is getting his gas relatively early. Looks like he threw it down at the 13 mark. So I must be thinking of the next game of the opening. But we can look right here. I actually preferred if he pumps out an extra SCV. As we saw, he stops at the 15 supply mark. And let's actually go back a little bit more to see exactly when this SCV completes. And so it finishes around the 239 mark. So if he queued up this SCV, it would have been 6 seconds already completed, or what is that? About a third, if not more, nearly half done for the next one. And there's other articles on Team Liquid that says to go up to 16 SCVs before the orbital command. It's only a difference of, I want to say 9 to 12 minerals or something like that. But getting that 16th SCV is, I think, really important rather than getting the orbital command a little bit faster. So he's going to get the orbital command, and what we're actually not going to do too much is look at our opponent. We're really not going to look too much on what the Zerg player is doing, and then in our next game what the Protoss player is doing. We're just trying to focus on what this Terran is doing. And Soviet was able to wall off before the drone really got too much information, even though this Overlord was able to find the position, and he should be able to get away from this single Marine. Alright, so my original assumption was completely wrong. I am thinking of the next game, in which, oh my god. Alright, so the first thing, this is really delayed. really delayed. So right now, he lifted off his barracks at the 355 mark when he had the 50 gas. And nothing really prevents him from getting the reactor right here, because it's in a relatively safe location from any baneling bust that might come, which is really annoying if, say, he spawned in this location, which the reactor would be part of the wall off, and then the Banes come up, blow the reactor and like one of these supply depots, and then it really sucks. So what Soviet's actually trying to do with this is he's trying to hide the tech a little bit, which he actually does a really bad job, as Screamer is going to see exactly what build he's doing. And so instead of starting the reactor at the 355 mark, we're actually starting it about 15 seconds late. Yeah, as it goes right now, and it's 4:10. So this build is 15 seconds late. And then he walls off. This supply depot technically is a little bit early. You should wait till about 22 for more optimal kind of builds. But since he moved off, he did need to wall this off a little bit quicker. I still highly recommend having this barracks just there and get the core there, since the supply depot can be a little bit later, so this SCV can do a little more mining, in which then your follow-up is going to be better. What we're going to see a big trend with, especially later on in the game, is Soviet starts to forget SCV production and his supply depots, which are very crucial, especially when you get to that mid to late game scenarios. And we're going to... This factory should already be lifted up. I think the command center is a little bit behind just because of all that shenanigans. But if the factory was already lifted in position, he could have dropped this down immediately and just started cranking out Hellions rather than having a little bit of dead time. So if he was more spot on, when these SCVs, when these Zerglings crept up, so we were already 15 seconds behind in the build, which means these Hellions would have been halfway done. And waiting for the time to transfer was probably another 5 seconds. So these Hellions should be at essentially 20%, or 20 seconds of the 30 completed, in which this Hellion harassment is actually a little later. I highly do not recommend this at all. I think this is a very gimmicky follow-up, which he's going to do. And it pays off a little bit. I just think the money investment isn't worth it. Like, it's much too... I don't want to use the word all-in-y, but you're putting way too many eggs in one basket for this to work, in which a good player is just going to lock it down immediately. We're going to see it do some damage, in which I keep talking about he's going to make advantage. And so we move out just with the 2 Hellions, and since we're getting the starport and all this shenanigans on, it was very hard, so now our Hellions are kind of staggered, which is fairly bad. That was kind of a misstep. And why I don't like this super much, and I still don't understand why he did this, other than throw this down, but you're essentially saying with this build is, I'm doing a pure powering up build. He has 3 Hellions, maybe 4. He has 3 Hellions out. I'm stopped making Hellions at this point. I'm now transitioning to a Marauder Banshee play. That's a very gimmicky follow-up. And we're also going to see these Hellions not do a whole lot. They poked in a little bit, saw the spine crawler, and then pulled back and just took the tower. These Hellions need to essentially be here. In which it's going to try to deny or slow down these creep tumors, but most importantly, deny these thirds from coming out. Like, this SCV doesn't need to really be here. If he had good Hellion control, that Hellion could have been out somewhere else, mining or doing something. Usually also you get the orbital command before you land it off, so that's another kind of thing to note. And we're going up to, this is our composition. 3 racks, 1 factory with a reactor, and 1 starport with a tech lab. This is a very funny looking building arrangement, I think. Since what we're saying is we're going to go 3 racks. We're also going to do some kind of Banshee harassment or a Banshee push. And then this is what confused me the most out of it. If you wanted a reactor factory, why didn't you just keep it on? And because this hasn't been dead for 65 seconds, even longer, because he took it off, waited a couple seconds, and then threw a barracks on there. So he's not even utilizing the building he has, and he's getting more and more buildings. So his really early game, I mean, we can look at the unit count right now. He has 3 Hellions, 1 Marauder, 2 Marines versus 19 Zerglings. And wow, we're behind in the worker count because, as I stated, we kind of missed a few seconds in between here and there with our SCVs, and that time starts to really add up. And so this Banshee, these Hellions gets thwarted by these Zerglings, with only taking out about 9 Zerglings died, and then the Zerg pushed in. I think the Zerg could have actually just ran past and started to do some harassment, and that would have been a whole lot of trouble for Screamer. This isn't walled off completely, so these Zerglings could have snuck in here. He saw a single Marauder enter that bunker, which usually would cue that he doesn't have a lot of Marines. And as we look at the unit tab, he only has 2 Marines. One which is patrolling for Overlords here, and the other one that's just here. If he ran these 9 Zerglings here, he could have killed this Marine and essentially stopped mining the base. So looking at the Terran build, this is awful. So if the Zerg actually pushed in and tried to do some damage to these Zerglings, Soviet would be far behind for at least another 10 seconds, it look like. So if we even look at our original build of being behind by 15 seconds, and if he was super tight with everything else, these Marines could have already been out to stop or to try to help hold off any of this harassment. Or if he just kept the reactor on, he would have had more Hellions, which would have stopped this kind of Zerglings. I'm not even really talking about his control. But we're going to see here in which this Banshee is going to actually rack up quite a lot of kills. We have 3 Queens out on the field. Where's his 3rd one? I see it's selected. It's somewhere on this screen. Alright, where's the other? Oh, okay. So this one's spreading creep. Usually to a Banshee response, you pull at least 2 Queens. Since, as we're going to see here, after picking up a few drones, this Queen actually loses to the Banshee just outright. And so this Banshee does still get a lot of kills, but these Queens should have been pulled a lot earlier to really stop that. So again, it's just kind of a cutesy move. Shooting the Viking is also a very kind of cutesy thing, in which he doesn't even utilize after a while. I think the Viking just kind of sits in his main base for most of the rest of the game. But now Soviet kind of feels like he's where he's at. This is where we're going to start seeing some major kind of production issues. And so we're going for this kind of standard Marine tank medevac push. He's actually going to do some drops earlier on, and this was the big thing. He was like, oh, my drops were so awesome, type of thing. So what he details, he pushes in here, he takes out a Spore, takes out a Spine, and then lifts off. I thought that was really good. So now we're going to go back the 10 seconds, which it was a little bit longer. And so as the Spore is being targeted down, we're going to slow it down, and we're going to see exactly what is building. We do not see a single supply depot being built. He is now supply blocked. It is around 11:50 when I said that. So we're going to wait until he becomes unsupply blocked. Alright, he threw down, so about 20 seconds late. to getting the supply depot down from realizing he was supply blocked. And you need to be making 2 supply depots at a time because you're on 2 base, because you have this much production, and then you're not building any SCVs out of these command centers. We're at 43 SCVs on 2 bases, which isn't too bad, but he's actually going to get ready to build a command center right now. Come on, throw it down. Come on, you can do it. And he could have gotten that faster if he canceled these, or it would have been delayed if he actually wasn't supply blocked to begin with. So now we're having the infamous queuing up units, which is really, really bad. And so all of this is happening when he's still doing kind of this drop harassment. So yeah, he's been able to kill some drones and all that stuff, but not making anything at your own home means he could have been just massing up this mass army and just pushed out with it with so many more units. And even though he was able to take out a decent supply beforehand, the drone lead was actually in, or the worker lead was actually in the Zerg's favor. But we're going to see that Zergs are able to really mass produce drones, so it's not going to be as big of a problem right now. What I do like is that Soviet has been getting +1 upgrades, combat shield. I don't like that he was able to, he needed to do call down supply twice to these supply depots. These guys need to already be building, come on, you can do it, you can do it. Bam, bam. And I mean, just out of all of his unit producing structures, he's still not constantly building things. He's doing way too much for what his unit producing structures are, because this is his main base saturation. He has 7 SCVs at his main base because he transferred a shit ton to his natural, which is oversaturated right now. Compared to the Zerg buddy who lost a lot of drones to these drops, is hey, he's actually saturating his main. He's a little bit undersaturated. He probably could make 2 more drones or so. And he doesn't have anything in his third yet because he just finished cleaning up a drop. So we're looking at it, and hey, our drone or worker advantage is now completely gone because we were not doing anything during our kind of cutesy drop stuff. Yeah, it dealt damage, but it wasn't a killing blow, so our follow-up is weaker. And now we're kind of moving out here. We're slow pushing some tanks, clearing some of these turrets. You didn't need to stim your Marines to kill creep tumors, but to each their own, I guess. And what I think is really funny, he cleared, and then he still threw down a creep tumor right after he cleared a few. And so he's trying this slow push with drops, and as soon as mutas are out, drops are really, really, really difficult to do. You need to be doing them constantly, and actually he doesn't have vision of the spire. He only has the information that he got with his original Hellions. So, yeah, that's just really bad. We're able to get +1s, all this shenanigans, and the Zerg army, even though he's complaining about mutas, completely demolishes these Marines with like 0 splits, and he splits after the fact, and is going to lose a few more tanks. But we're more importantly going to look at this stuff. So we have 5 barracks, 1 starport, 1 factory, 2 factories now, and we have exactly 50 workers on 3 base. We have exactly 4 guys on minerals, 7 on minerals, and then we're about saturated, we're even undersaturated in our natural. So we have 0 bases with saturation. So even though that we're getting more expansions and everything else, what's even more important is to keep building SCVs, because that's actually going to impact our income. On 3 bases, you get about 800 minerals plus 200 minerals per mule. So on 3 bases, you should be around 24, since one is planetary fortress, so what is that, 2,800 you should be at. And he's not even on 2 base income saturation for his minerals. This is awful. Really, really awful. If he fixed this, then he would be able to use all of these. If his macro was better, he would have realized that he can't support these additional barracks or these factories. Oh god, he's 3 factories? There's no way in his current income he'll ever be able to support this. If he was going to be able to support this, he would need to actually keep building these SCVs in saturation, all that stuff. So yeah, you can say he dealt pretty good damage with this drop, and then he killed a lot of drones with here. The Banshee killed, I think, 8 drones or 9 drones and a queen. All good stuff. But it doesn't really force a Zerg player to get an evolution chamber, since they usually get it fairly quickly anyways. And so the Spore is just a tiny investment. Another big thing that we're going to realize, we're actually just going to speed through this kind of replay. Ultimately, Soviet just kind of gets in really bad position. This is where the mutas actually use the terrain for his advantage. Putting this tank up here is really cute, but not having a marine spread in a good way to cut off mutas from picking it off is really bad. But that's a cutesy move, and I wouldn't even really even mess with that. God, he has all these unit producing structures and he just cannot support it. I mean, this is worse than I even remember watching this a few days ago. I mean, we're not producing at 1, 2, 3 of our buildings, and we're at 0 minerals completely. And look at our gas. I mean, these guys shouldn't be mining gas. Just put them on minerals. Really, really bad. And we're still around, yeah, exactly 50 SCVs. Our opponent isn't doing as much better, but as you can see, he's not actually mining optimally from his gas. So he's actually getting a much bigger income than us, as we can see. Oh god, it's essentially double, and we have mules. That's what I would work on. And in his response saying things that he did wrong or right, he did not once mention his income. He did not once mention his SCVs, did not once mention how many times he was supply blocked at weird times. If he fixed that game, that part of his game, he would win a lot more in this matchup. And we're going to see, yeah, Zerg is already at 2-2 when we have 1-0. One of the things he talked about on after watching the replay was, oh, should I have gotten my +1 a little earlier for my armor and pushed out with 1-1? It's like, yeah, you could have done that, but the Zerg player was already at 2-2 already. And we can already, he has an infestor pit and has the hive going. So he's probably going to have 3-3 starting very soon. So he's going to have 3-3 ground units to your 1-1 marines, and which these mutas just still wreak havoc. And this isn't why he lost the game. The mutas aren't why he lost the game, even though there's no turrets. But the biggest thing, yeah, he complains about mutas. But he could have had turrets if he built SCVs and actually been mining. Let's look at the energy. 84 is not bad. 91. So they're starting to rack up later game. But he could have had such a bigger army and such a scarier force if he just built SCVs and supply depots. He had like kind of, okay, I know that I need about 3 unit producing structures per base. And that's roughly what he had, since he had 3 base and he had, just looking at it very closely again, and he had a 10. So he was a little bit over kind of the rule of thumb of 3 unit producing structures per base, which would have been 9. But he can't support it because he's barely on 2 base income of minerals, and he wants to produce out of 3 base maximum saturation. So that's never going to happen. He's behind. The game ends around the 21-minute mark, and he has +1, +0. Almost +1 for his armor, but that was just really, really bad. And so I responded to him saying, hey, you know, you did point out the drops were really good, but the drops are going to be even better if you macro behind it. And before I move on to the next game, I'm going to give one of my examples. Since I started out as a Zerg player, I was in the Proud Silver Division. That's where I started, right when everyone was doing Reaper rushes, because you can get Nitro Packs without a factory. You can even get that barracks before the supply depot. So that was a lot of fun as a Zerg at that time. And then I started to figure out how to hold that off. They patched the notes and all that fun stuff. So my macro was pretty bad. Not gonna lie, my micro was even worse because I would just kind of Zerglings go, and this was before even banings were popular, since people didn't know how to use them yet, like that new to the game. But eventually, like I got up to Gold League, and then I still had some struggles with, came to the conclusion, I'm much more of a Terran mindset. I'm not really in that batch mindset that Terran or that Zerg has to be in which do I make 6 drones right now out of this larva batch, or do I make 12 Zerglings types of things. That's just not how my brain works. I like things being constantly going blah 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 blah. So I switched to Terran, and of course one of the first strats that you learned, especially when I was there in my league, is the Banshee Rush. And so I would Banshee Rush every single game and blah 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 blah. Then I joined the Purdue StarCraft Club, and I was starting to do the Banshee Rush, and they're like, your Banshee control could be a little bit better. So I started to focus on that. And my Banshee control got a little better. And they're like, yeah, you're almost there. Keep working on it. And I kept working on it. And then my Banshee control was just completely awesome. It's just like, yeah, I know how to do this. I know how to get my Banshees out, get 2 Banshees, get 3 Banshees, control them, split them in different situations. If he has turrets here or spores or cannons, you just start moving them around, use the terrain to your advantage and everything else, blah, 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 blah. And so, like, I went back to the Boost StarCraft Club, and I was playing with all my buddies. I'm like, yeah, I'm controlling the hell out of these Banshees, blah, 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 blah. And, I mean, I get 13 kills on this one, 16 kills on this one, and I'm feeling really awesome about myself, because it was just a really cute thing that I was doing. And then always after, like, something stabilized, like he threw up a lot of turrets, or he killed them, best case scenario for him. Like, I was like, okay, I'm done with my Banshees. Let's go back to my main base. And I would realize that I've been supply blocked during that entire Banshee push time, which usually drug on for 30 to 2 minutes, depending on what was going on. So my minerals stood around the 2,000 mark and all that stuff. And so then I would spaz out, throw down 3 supply depots or even just 3 command centers, more barracks or whatever, and then they would just move out and kill me when I was doing all this. And so then I really started to look at my replays. Even games that I've won, I would start looking at the replays, and I would say, you know what? My macro is awful. Like, I'm just not building SCVs. That was the biggest thing for me. Like, most of my games I would stop around 20 to 22 SCVs, and I would even have an expansion, and I wouldn't do that. And so I still did Banshee stuff, but what I started to focus more on is not the control of the Banshees, but more of spending my money. Having that follow-up, because you don't try to kill an opponent right away. The best way, personally, that I think to do it is to mineral starve them. Hey, you got minerals, I'll just keep stacking my army to you until it's just an even trade, essentially. So that's my favorite strategy of all time, of just mineral starve, rather than just like the smash face or like the massive drops and all that stuff, working on the cutesy stuff. Just because I found out when I do that, sometimes my macro slips. But going back to my original story, so as I realized the macro was really bad, when I would send a Banshee in, I would immediately just go back to my base and just build the additional command centers, supply depots, SCVs, what have you. And then I started to realize that I started not paying attention to my Banshee, and then they would die. But since I was working on my macro, it became more intuitive to do. So even though I had a really strong foundation with Banshee control, I said, let's not work on this. So my Banshee control, let's say it was at 100%, and now it went down to like 70% as I was working on my macro. And let's say when my Banshee was at 100%, my macro was at 20%. Slashing the Banshee control to 70%, my macro then jumped up to, let's just say, 50%. So it was about a 30% increase and all that stuff. I know that's arbitrary, but I'm just coming up with numbers real quick. And the more and more you work on it, you start to find out that, hey, my Banshee control is actually getting better because I'm jumping back to my base and then I immediately go back to my Banshees and macro them. And I'm continually to build stuff for my follow-up attack or defense of a counter push and all that shenanigans. And it was just really hard practice of not only watching the games that I won to see, like, okay, I won the game, but what could have I done better? Was my minerals low? Was I hitting my timings? Could my banshees been faster? Could my command center, could my third command center been faster, type of thing? And that's how I started to view my games, and that's when I started to really improve. And so I went from a gold Zerg player to a diamond Terran player in a relatively short time, because that's how I watch my games. And I do a lot of self-study and all that stuff. And so it's not just the lost games that you can look at and be like, oh, I'm so bad because of this type of thing. Look at your winning games to see exactly what you're doing right. In that case, it was early Banshee rushes. And look at weaker areas from your winning games that you can improve on to be even better. And why you kind of do that, the psychology behind it, a lot of sports psychologists talk about focusing on what you do right rather than what you do wrong, and you'll improve faster. I've been trying to find for the past week the name of the study, but when I was in college, I was taking like a random kind of sports, what are they even called? Random athletic class. Wow, I can't believe I just that word. And one of our days, most of the days, we would just kind of play the game. I think at the time I was playing bowling, so this is a pertinent story. So I was playing bowling, and I think I started the class with like an 80 or 90 average, which isn't good at all. But our professors then started to use a little bit more of sports psychology into it, in which, yeah, we weren't recording ourselves, so we didn't have that luxury of seeing exactly like our follow-through and all that stuff, but we could have our practice partner kind of talk us like, oh yeah, we're seeing this. But the sports psychology behind it, our practice partner wouldn't point out, oh, you're not taking that extra step, you're not swinging your arm this way, you're not doing this or that. The sports psychology said, point out what they're doing right, not what they're doing wrong. And the psychology behind it, which is that experiment what I've been looking for, they had control group A and control group B. Control group A was only positive reinforcement, essentially. It was just like, wow, that was really good. You know, you had a really good back draw to then get much more velocity to throw the ball. Keep doing that. While control group B was more, yeah, you have a really good pullback, but you really should be crossing your arm more to get more kind of English on the ball, so then it curves more to hit at the optimal angle and everything else. And this test went on for, I think, about 3 months. It could have been longer. It's been a while since I was in that course. And what they found out is the averages of control group A, which was the positive reinforcements, they had a drastic increase with all of their averages just by focusing on what they're doing right. And then they can make little tweaks of what they're doing wrong, but they're only focusing on what they're doing right. While control group B, they actually stayed exactly the same. Like, their averages didn't improve at all. Like, maybe some people got like maybe a 5-point average increase, but there were others that got a 5 decrease to their average because they were only focusing on things they did bad. So how I relate that back to my StarCraft 2 story is, I identified what I did really fucking well, in which I had Banshee control. Yeah, everything else just was completely gone, but my biggest improvement that I saw from playing on ladder and everything else was me focusing on the kind of one-trick pony that I had, was this Banshee rush. And then, when I got to the point of hitting that next plateau, I started to look at, okay, I'm going to still do what I do really well, but I'm going to try to improve it more. And so when I watch replay, I watch my resource management or top right management to then improve that. And then when I started to get more experience, I stopped doing the Banshee Rush altogether. It's still in my repertoire, but building off something you are really, really fucking good at, or even something you want to be good at, focus on that. And that's all you should focus on when you're just learning. Just focus on that over and over and over and over and over again. And just get damn fucking good with it. So in that last game, we saw that drop. And I even said, looking at the replays, oh, he really should have done this. But if that was like maybe game 5 or whatever in a practice session of working on those drops were really good. He dealt damage, he pulled up all of his Marines before SCV or the Zerglings killed them all and all that stuff. And so those were very successful drops. Very successful drops. Now, he should watch those replays of not only him losing like that, and he needs to identify why he lost that and not blame it on mutas as he did at the end of the game. Which is why you kind of need practice partners or really self-awareness of why he lost games. But if he got those drops to be really, really good, they decrease a little bit because he's working on his macro, his follow-up and overall gameplay is going to get so much better. Same thing with the bowlers, focusing on their strengths and then kind of tweaking their weaknesses. Because a lot of the time, if you keep working on something really, really good that you're really, really good at, the weaknesses just kind of disappear on their own. I know it sounds a little crazy, but the psychology is that they do. And a lot of the time, like if he was really working on that drop play, if, what was his name, Styles? I don't know, it's the wrong guy. Soviet. If Soviet kept working on his drop play, I would watch every single replay after I did a drop, and I would just watch my resources, watch if I could supply block. How can I do this drop better? I know I kicked ass. I killed 30 drones and all that stuff, but how can I kick ass even more? And that's how I approach StarCraft 2 and approach any other game that I do. Like, even though I may have won or something like that, I watch it again anyways to see exactly why I won, and is there anything I could have done better? Coming from a sports background, because before I got more in the East, I'll save that story. I'm talking a whole lot. Let's jump into game 2, which is going to be a TVP, and this is actually of the Terran player winning. What he's going to do this game, which I confused with last game, he is going to do a 1 Rax fast expand into Medivacs. This was bad, but we're not going to count that really against him. And hopefully I'm not going to stop it as much as I did the last game. I usually don't watch or I don't analyze replays for other people, so I probably was jumping around a lot, so I apologize. I'm going to try to take the more observer route for when I do in the CSL. And I'm going to stop it here to make my first kind of problem. Point out something good. He got his... Excuse me. Actually, yeah. He got his orbital command on 16. I like that a lot. Really like that a lot. Keep doing that. If you wanted a wall off, he should have built the first supply depot here. Small change. He doesn't have to. It's TVP. I don't wall off at all in TVP. Personal preference, but that's what I would do to improve that. Now, he is going to do this 1 RS Vax expand. Oh, God, I need to go back, because he did a major blunder, in which, even though I just got done talking about the sports psychology and everything else, there are some times in which it's just like, no, never, ever do that again. I mean, this is kind of like if you were in that bowling scenario and you picked up the ball and you're like, yeah, let's bowl, and then you just shot put it. Like, don't do that. Like, it's one of those mistakes that as soon as I saw this first replay, I just went, what are you doing? Kind of had that Jackie Chan going on. Just like, ah! So I'm going to address the issue in a much more calm voice, in which this happens. We send a scout on 9. Oh, shit. I didn't show that to you. My bad. So, what he does is he sends a scout, actually on 8, in which he's just scouting. He's straighting, bam, straight for this Protoss' base. What are you going to see at that time that you aren't going to see if you send a first scout after your supply depot, or even after your racks for that matter? What in your build are you going to change at the 1 minute mark. So beyond just asking what you're looking for with that such an early scout, and he could have been proxying, but he doesn't. What happens with sending out such an early scout compared to after the supply depot's done scout or a rack scout is you're losing a lot of mining time. This is the first mistake in which actually delays his racks expand by, I think it's 20 seconds. This one thing, if he fixed, he could have bought 20 seconds in his early game. In 20 seconds, that's 5 seconds away from a Marine. That is huge. Huge. Huge, 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 huge. If you don't believe how huge it is, if you've ever seen a PvP, even just being casted by someone, and they say that a cybernetics core is 5 seconds late, and both players are doing a 4-gate, 5 seconds can cost you the game. 2 seconds, I think in some cases, can cost you the game, especially if you're doing mimic builds like a 4-gate versus a 4-gate. This is 20 seconds we're talking about. 20. 2-0. That risk is not worth it. There's no reason he should be sending this out. I needed to make that such a huge point. To never, ever, ever. Whoa, really fast. And he pops in, and I don't even think he saw... No, he didn't see a damn thing. He didn't spot anything or anything else. He didn't see the pylon or anything. So he could have been thinking this was a proxy, and he just takes the tower and sits this SCV here the entire time. Shot put. And then he rescouts and all that fun stuff. But anyway, moving on. The standard timings for a 1-racks fast expand is the command center starts around the 3:30 mark. And he starts at 4 seconds, or at the 3:50 mark, so 20 seconds late, as I previously stated. If he had this one SCV mining minerals, especially early game, he would have had the minerals to get this a lot faster. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. But that's just kind of basic kind of build management and all that stuff. He actually could have had that timing down if he didn't send that out. So I'm not even harping that it's 20 seconds late. I'm harping about this guy. Steve the SCV. Steve. Bad Steve. But he actually does fairly well. I think he got this gas a little early for what he's going to do, but that's fine. He could have gotten these 2 racks up faster. Or if he is going to do kind of a factory transition, usually you take both of them really quick. But to each their own. It doesn't really affect him. Why I said it was early is he started the tech lab and he had about 100 gas. So he could have delayed the gas to go racks refinery. But that's refinement. He's fine. Dioko is totally fine. So he's going to take this expansion, drops it down, all that fun stuff. He's actually going to build SCVs, which is a huge improvement versus Soviet. And he's going to stay for this 2-base play. You can't see it, but the game is relatively short. Big thing is... Oh! Blasted past it. I'm doing really bad. I'm sorry, guys. I usually don't do analysis for other people other than jumping around erratically like I am now. So this is very hard to follow other than the stories that I've told. But going back here, so we're at the 7-minute mark right now. He gets his factory and all that stuff, gets his second gas. And then he gets the eBay. Why I do not like this eBay timing right here is because he's getting stim first. If he was getting combat shield first, I wouldn't have that big of an issue with. But usually if you're getting stim first and getting this factory and all that jazz, it means you're going for a starport play. He has 2 gas going. He's not going to have enough gas to support getting this +1, this upgrade, a reactor, starport, and 2 medevacs. You just can't. And so what we're going to see here very shortly is the factory is going to be completed. Haha! +1! Oh crap. Always start the starport before the reactor. Another kind of quick little build order thing. But this was a big mistake compared to the starport, or getting the stem for the starport kind of play. And we're actually still, I don't think we're going to mine efficiently out of this one refinery. So we're going to get this reactor starport, and we're going to make 1 medevac out of it, which is depressing. Scouting, that's totally fine. Lift off, lift off, go. What he's kind of doing, oh, I missed that. Yeah, that's bad. Oop. And we have the single medevac, and he's going to push out when this medevac is done, essentially. Never gets combat shield, I don't think, the whole game. Another thing to work on, he's going to have this +1, and he got this 2nd engineering bay. If he got an armory, it would have been much more important, since he could have started +2s, and he's going to have 2 engineering bays not doing anything for a long time. What we saw in the production tab, Ghost Academy is going down. You cannot support ghosts and dropships on 2 base. If you are able to support this, you are not having enough marine support, in which literally you're pushing out with ghosts and medevacs, in which most of the time the TOS army is going to wreck you. You have to decide either ghosts or starport. Ghost or starport on 2 base. Once you get to 3 base, you can support it. No problem. So that's another kind of whoopsie daisy, I'll call it. So, I mean, Ghost Academy is 150. You can't see it there, but it's 150 minerals. So, nearly halfway to the next command center. And we start having supply block problems. But we are 11 minutes in the game compared to the 20 minutes of the last game, and we're about at the equal SCV mark. Doing better with SCVs on 2 bases, and just to, oh god, oversaturated in main. Awesome. So he needs to transfer these. Usually you just re-rally this command center here. So that's just a small little thing that he can work on. Standing army is fine. He probably could have sliced a little bit and made like more of an arc here to block it off. And all that stuff, but that's fine. So even though he's going to win this game, as I've stated several times, we've pointed out several things he can work on to be even better. Usually if you want to do like a 2 medevac push, you can usually hit them around in between the 10 and 12 minute mark. I like waiting for 4 medevacs in TVP, since having 2, or in this case 1, if I was Protoss, because I do play random, I would target down this medevac and I would kite you as much as I can. I would use force fields, and as soon as I would see you stim, I would just start to laugh, because I'm not going to engage you. I'm just going to force field, wait till the stim wears off, and you just dealt, let's see here, there's 24, you've done 240 damage of just your Marines, and you've done, what is it, 7, so 7 times 20, and 140, so just a lot, 300, 410 damage to yourself immediately, which I'm going to force field and just wait. That's why I like to have 4, since it's just a little easier, or it's harder for them to target it down, and then you just lose. Another reason I like combat shield first. But anyway, we're going to see this move out, and it's going to do its thing. But back at home, looking at the production, we only have 1 supply depot. We need 2 supply depots going at all times. We should have had an armory. This Ghost Academy could have been an armory to support these. That's actually the cleanest fix, because an armory is 150, 100. So it would have just been 100 extra gas to support our 2-2s. Still, 1 medevac at a time. Really bad. It's doing his thing. I don't really care, because the protest player made even more mistakes than this guy did. If you want to believe that. And then we have the third command center going up during the hit, which isn't too bad. I think he could have gotten it a little bit earlier. This is the biggest fallacy, I think, here, because he got it, and we can look, we don't have a single ghost out. Absolutely no reason. Our gas is out of control because we haven't been producing medevacs. We finally have saturation here. As soon as our third's up, we should transfer more. So, and we should have started this combat shield really early, or as soon as stim was completed. So even though this guy won the game, we've pointed out, cut that early scout, no reason to have that there at all. Cut early scout, get the 2 racks and then a gas. If you're doing for a more biocentric play, you will have enough gas to start that tech lab if you start those 2 racks up. Start the starport before the reactor. Usually if you're getting stim first, don't get that +1, so we're up to 4 mistakes right now. What else? Never got combat shield. Built Ghost Academy, that's 6. Got a second eBay, 7. Didn't rally, I'm not going to count that. So we have a winning game. We have a winning strategy. We are going Marine, Marauder, Medevac. Go! We hit around the 11 mark, 12 minute mark. Hit around, let's just go back to the game. We'd at the 12, 15 minute mark, we'll say. And we win the game. Awesome! Now, I'm going to watch this replay, blah, 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 and do the same kind of self-analysis that I just did, in which, oh god, I didn't even point out our money, other than our gas I said was way high. And we're going to look first at, was I ever supply blocked? That's kind of the #1 checklist. Was I supply blocked at all? Was I? That I need to make sure I build an build a supply depot at this time, and I can use this as a trigger. Most common that I've talked about before is had that union worker of just having like 1 SCV. As soon as he's done making a supply depot, you'll have that idle SCV icon pop up right here, and just press F1 or whatever your custom key is, and just go BS, click, and then go back to your action. Very common when I'm playing. I'm macroing my army, and I'll either here, structure complete or supply depot complete. I'll tap F1, I'll go BS, BS, 1-1, back to my army, and I'm just back to it. And I usually can do that under a second, roughly. So it's just bam, da-da-da-bam, and then back to your army. You can just practice that. Really easy. Super, super easy. Easiest thing in the world to remember supply depots, and you need 1 union worker per base. So since he was on 2 base when he got to the later game, or as his opening really, because it was a Rax expand, you need to start having 2 supply depots at a time to be able to support all of the unit producing structures that you have. So watch the replay, see when you're supply blocked. Next, was I building SCVs all the time? Was my saturation correct? That's #2 on the checklist. #3, was I getting the right structures in the right order? So as we talked about, we could have gotten the Raxes before the gas. That's #3. #4 is making sure we're building out of all of our unit producing structures. #5 is to see if our army is actually doing well. If this attack actually went well. This is what we want to do. This is our kind of pre-game. We want to hit Medevac, Marine, Marauder, Stim timing push with +1. That is our 5th least important thing, or I guess our 5th important thing. We have 4 other things to worry about before we even get to where we want to be. when reviewing a replay type of thing, in which we could have hit this earlier and had a lot more. We could have had combat shields, which would have given our Marines 250 extra hit points, because there's 24 here and combat shield goes 10, so 10 times 24, 250. We could have started +2 a lot earlier. So our follow-up, if this push didn't work, would have been stronger. I'm showing things because I am frantically just kind of clicking around, and it would be a little nauseating. So I apologize. But those are kind of the checklists that I would do. I'm actually going to write it down so I don't forget. These are things that I just naturally do, and I didn't create a slideshow as I usually do, or a PowerPoint. So number 1, supplies. Supply block. Number 2, SCV production. Number 3, building production. Number 4, unit production. Number 5, micro or army. With my nasty looking handwriting and all that stuff, those are just quick things. And yes, I do have 3.5s in arm's reach at all time, as I make a lot of silly little notes. The hell is all... Yeah, what the hell is that? I don't know. I'm just going to cover up this guy's name. But this is just one of my sample random-ass note cards. Oh, look, the gasless versus 13 gas versus 17 gas versus Reaper Marauder. This was essentially just a random-ass note card that I picked up. This stuff is work-related, so this isn't going to make any sense to you. But the gasless stuff, I actually write this stuff down. Writing it down helps you remember things. Saying out loud is the best, I think, of learning things. So if you're learning how to read, what do we first do? We read out loud. And then, really we start with saying each letter. Then we start saying short words, and then we start saying bigger words. And then we start reading for leisure and don't say anything out loud at all, unless we're trying to sound things out that we don't know, in which then we bust out the nice dictionary and all that fun stuff. But back on track. Okay, so we just talked about those 2 replays, watching a winning game, watching a losing game, and now we have these kind of 5 things to look out for when reviewing a replay. Again, it's number 1, were we ever supply blocked? Number 2, were we making SCVs saturated on each base? Number 3, were we building buildings? Number 4, were we always producing units out of our unit producing structures? And number 5, how was our army doing? Easy enough. And why it's kind of in that order is supply blockage will allow us to actually build things. SCVs are going to increase our income. Buildings are going to be able to make us spend money. Units are spending the money. And then 5, which is controlling the army and micro, is actually winning the game or doing damage or whatever. And if you're supply blocked, you're not doing any of the remaining 4. If you're not making SCVs, you're not doing the remainder 3. If you're not building unit producing structures, you're not doing the last 2, 1, etc., etc. Easy peasy. But I'm actually going to show you it's probably one of my favorites. My favorite custom map of all time is something called the unit test map. Oh my god. I spend up to 2 hours in this. Not every day, but at least once a week I'll sit in here and just try crazy unit combinations, doing different micro splitting and all that other crazy stuff. But outside of the unit test station, I really like this build order test zone by Elemental. Elemental. And why I like it is because you can restart your game really, really fast. And so you just load it up. It doesn't matter what race you actually pick. because one of the cool features it has is if you want to restart as your race, you just hit Enter T for Terran, P for Protoss, or Z for Zerg, in which I'll demonstrate right off the bat. So let's say if you just wanted to work on splitting, like something that you only practice really once every single game. So we select them, split Marines, SCV. Alright, my SCV was late and my split felt a little slow. I hit T and we restart all over again. This time I'm going to start with F1 split and hit the SCV. Okay, hitting the F1 to select all my SCVs felt a little bit faster, but I'm still not building my SCV right away. Let's restart. SCV. Oh, now I selected because I'm just muscle memory and I queued it up. I've now practiced splitting 3 times in a row. Let's practice it again. And this is how neurotic you can become with not only splitting units up and building SCVs to get that in the right order, and all that other fun jazz. But it also just becomes such a muscle memory thing that like you don't even think about it, as I can talk to you and just do it essentially. But enough of that.
Not enough minerals. Not enough minerals.
We'll actually go on, and what I don't like is it still is restricted to the 2 pauses, which isn't that big of a deal. But sometimes when I'm thinking out to build, I'll pause and I just think, just like, okay, I have a saturated main, I have 2 gases going, my natural's almost done. What's my next phase? In this example, I'm going to do you can look at my big face. In this example, I'm going to do the Rex fast expand. So I'm getting supply depot on 10, Rex on 12, another supply depot at around 17, and then command center, and that timing should hit at the 3:30 mark, as I showed on this little card of my theory crafting. And I talked about Terran openings, I think last week. So if you want to know more in detail of the breakdown of each of those builds, I highly recommend watching Terran It Up episode 4. So we're going to jump back in the action.
Game resumed.
Making sure everyone can see
Not
it.
enough
What
minerals.
I don't like about this map is it's not a standard mineral layout.
Not enough minerals.
So you're like, especially this is way too far away. And this is only 2 base saturation as it cuts off. And a lot of the builds that I'm trying to work on right now go to 3 base. This supply depot was late. I could restart right now, but let's just kind of run through it. Am I at normal speed? I feel like this is going slow. I guess not. In which, sometimes, like, I want to see if I can support things, so I'm going to just send out that scout as I would in a normal game, rather than just build this 12. I like scouting after supply depot. That's just my personal preference. And then I throw down the racks and all that stuff. If I was being extremely anal retentive about this build, I would take one of my note cards and actually write down each time that I built a barracks or supply depot or any major building, to then use benchmarking to say, like, okay, I got my Rex at the 2-minute and 45-second mark. I do it again and I get it at the 2-minute and 43-second mark. It's like, okay, why was that one faster? And then I review why. Like, it usually is because the supply depot was late or something.
Go ahead.
We're also just going to re-rally this guy back here. 16. Marines started immediately. Actually, this guy's going to start that. And we're just spamming B for orbital command. Bam, go. Whew. And for this map, as if you're looking down in the bottom left, don't use that timer. That timer will continue to grow and grow and grow. We're looking at the top right, which is also good because it has us look at our minerals a lot more frequently. And so we're at the 3:30 mark now.
Upgrade complete.
And something went wrong with our build. Something just went wrong. It could have been because the supply depot was late, that it went down like about 5 seconds late. And so, bam, that's the information I wanted to know. We're starting again.
In the rear, huh?
I'm just going to do this one more time. I'm not going to keep going over it. I just want to show you like the power of just using this map to continue doing a build. This is really, really helpful, especially if you're just working on a 1 or 2 base play, as I previously mentioned. And actually having this kind of gimpy mineral layout is beneficial because in a real game, you can actually then do the builds faster, and especially if you start even working on stacking your SCVs up earlier, like I'm just doing right now. Oh, it's kind of gimpy.
In the rear with the gear.
You can then get more minerals earlier to speed up your build and just little fixes like that. So I'm stacking these guys up. I'm actually doing a really bad job stacking these guys up.
Go ahead.
So our benchmark, we're trying to reach the 3-minute and 30-second mark. Last time we hit it around the 3:35 mark. And it could also be, as I'm sending out this scouting SCV to put him out of his misery, essentially. Oh god, I forgot rats. And that's how critical you have, well, how critical I am at least with this build. You know, to be honest, I think I've showed enough examples of how to utilize that testing map and how just anal retentive you have to be. And how bad actually I am is after I'll do a build like about 6 times and I want to hit it spot on 3 times perfectly before I'm actually happy with it. Once I'm done practicing, I actually review tape because it saves the entire session. So we're going to randomly see all of our things explode, restart over. We're going to see everything randomly explode, restart over. And I watch exactly which is faster. And we keep using the top right clock and all that fun stuff. This is why I think this is the perfect, like, I wish it just was on a better kind of map layout. Like if it was just on one of the quarters of the Shattered Temple, for example, like that would be awesome. Like I would be so happy to just be able to have the first 2 bases have the rocks to the 3rd and even a gold, so you can work on so many different strategies related to that. I think that's the only thing that would make this map better. And I don't have the know-how of working with StarCraft 2 triggers to actually do it myself, so here's a shout out, please someone do that, since not only will it help me a whole fuck of a lot, it'll help everyone else out. Just to get rid of the gimpy minerals and all that stuff. But we're not going to watch this super much more, and we're just kind of speed it through. And so I'm just going to take timings real quick. So we started our first barracks game 1 at 140. That's all I care about. And we're just going to kind of speed through. We're going to see exactly how delayed this command center was.
Upgrade.
So around 3 minutes and 35 seconds. It was 5 seconds late and I wasn't happy. I wanted to meet the 3:30 benchmark. Simple, done.
Complete.
So then I quit and start again.
SCV ready.
And I'm going to continue this game until I realize I forget my barracks and then I just leave. So this time my supply depot is on a better time, in which then we have... We probably still could have started the barracks around the 3... Actually, we could have started it now at the 3:38. So our last game was 3:40. This time was 3:38. Our build is 2 seconds faster. May not sound like a lot, but every second starts to add up. We are talking about 2 or 5 seconds in the first not even 2 minutes of the game. If you start making those mistakes early game, your middle game is really going to suffer. And you're actually going to then have this kind of quizzical like, I don't know why I'm losing. I mean, I'm doing everything right. I'm getting 3 barracks. I'm getting my natural up. I'm getting my +1 upgrades. I don't know what I'm doing wrong. Well, you're probably losing seconds here and there. You're probably getting your gas a little too early. You're probably getting your command center really late. You're probably scouting really early. that's how, if you really want to analyze your own play, I'm extremely neurotic about my own play, in which even if I'm doing a fun game with people I know, like I've been complained about so much, like, why did you leave? You still had a chance to come back. But a lot of times when I'm practicing something, as soon as I make a mistake, I'm done. Like, there's been plenty of times in which, same mistake, I get a late barracks and I just leave the game. They're like, what's going on? Like, why did you leave the game? We still could have played it out. It's just like, yeah, we could have played it out, but my strategy was so inferior already that there's no point. Like, I can't learn from it. And if we're doing a custom one-on-one game, I'm going to try to learn about it, unless we're actually doing like a fake show match, which I also like doing, in which I don't leave those games. But if it's just for fun, or like, hey, I want to try this build, oh god, I will leave the second I think something went horribly wrong. So yeah, we talked about 2 replays. I analyzed the 2 kind of frantically, and I apologize with that, as, excuse me, I'm either in a casting mode or an analytic mode, and my analytic mode jumps around a whole lot. So hopefully you followed a little bit about that. And then I just went over how I like to test builds, how I like to then benchmark, how I do neurotic things like write shit down and then keep writing things down. As you see, the 13 gas marker, there's a nice erase thing. I figured out how to make it faster. I think originally I like wrote 355 or probably 355, and I figured out how to make it 5 seconds faster. Really easy peasy, all that fun stuff. I don't think you need to playtest every single build. I think creating resources like me of analyzing the kind of standard 5 expansion racks openings, like you can just use that as a guide to then go your own way and say like, hey, I really like gasless expands, which is like everyone does for some reason. I think they're fairly inferior. But that's a whole new episode, and it depends on the race. So with that all said and done, above my little head, you can join channel onmyface.tv in StarCraft 2 to answer questions, or if you're actually watching the stream, you can ask them there. Ask anything about what you saw today, or any questions of builds, or if you've lost a game and you have a replay for me to watch, I'll watch it and point out shit that I think you're doing really well, and things that you can improve on. Let's see if I had this other replay. Oh my god, yeah, I have a set of 3 of someone that I've been helping for a while now. He's been trying to work on his 2 racks. And especially since Day 9 recently just did an entire special related to the 2 racks, he wanted to do it. I think that's really great for players to get inspired by watching Day 9, watching their favorite pros. My favorite pro is Nada. He's no longer OGS Nada, which doesn't break my heart because he's still Nada and still is just fucking awesome. But like, just follow your favorite player or whatever and try to mimic all day, all the livelong day. You don't need to do the crazy things that I do, and really just have fun with the game. So there are no current questions now. So I'm going to, let's see here. Oh god, how long have I been on? For over an hour? Oh! Okay. So, we have a question. Viewer lag and all that stuff. We have a question from Makomi. Ooh. When is a good time to take a second starport in TVP? When you take your third, or at some later point? How I would really answer that is depending on if I scout Colossus or not. Since that's the only time I would really make more than one starport, is if they have Colossus to make Vikings. If they're doing like a High Templar, medevacs are important, but I can make that out of 1, and I usually stop medevac production at 8, because if you start producing more than 8, you usually start really diluting your supply. Since medevacs cost 2 supply, which is essentially is a Marauder, and I'd much rather have an extra Marauder than 9 or 10 medevacs. So, related to TVP getting a second starport, it's only if I see, like, if they opened up a fast robo. If they did like a gate robo, gate kind of thing, I would get a second starport fairly quickly, because I never want that Colossus to be out of control. And I always open up in TVP a 17 gas expand, which you drop the expansion at the 3 minute and 50 second mark. And then I get Marauders, and then I think I even do 4 racks, is what I do, to hold off any Void Ray pushes at the 7:30 mark. And I even get an eBay for missile turrets if I sense that. And then at the 3rd, when you take your 3rd, or at some later point. Again, taking my 3rd usually doesn't trigger me to get an extra starport, unless I want. The only time I would get extra starports is I would get 3 additional starports and go BCs on 3 base. Just for lols, but I only do that as kind of like I am in such a lead that this is just going to be funny, because I love going 3 battle cruisers at the same time. But yeah, even on 2 base, I'll get a second starport, because if they are cranking out Colossus, especially if they do like a double robo out of nowhere to pump out Colossus, I mean, I'm going to try to make 4 Vikings at a time, since my rule of thumb is for every 1 Colossus they have, I need 4 Vikings. So if they have 2 Colossus, I have 8, and so on and so forth. I don't know the exact timing with the Colossus, like how long it takes to build. I want to say it takes like 60 seconds, 60 or 70 seconds. With Chrono Boost it's shorter. But Vikings take 42 seconds, and if I'm making 4 at a time, I should be able to play kind of catch up if I scout it early. And it's going to take the Colossus kind of a long way to kind of do their walk across the map. So I should be able to have in between 4 and 8 Vikings, even if I do a reactionary play to it. And I rarely ever... well, I shouldn't say that. If you're feeling a little contained in TVP, like on 2 base or something like that, and you want to start kind of stretching out the Protoss army, I really like going, I just spaced on the name, Banshees. I really like making Banshees. I'm not trying to do damage with them, I'm trying to have their army pull back, because if their army is still kind of poking at my front, then my Banshee should get a lot of kills of probes or things like that. And it just forces them to then even warp in units at home rather than warp in reinforcements blocking my natural. In that case, I would still always have 1 starport with your reactor. I think that's really crucial in getting out medevacs to keep your bio army alive if you're going bio. I would get a second starport to get a tech lab for Banshees, probably as I just started my 3rd, or maybe even a little before, depending on how gateway heavy they are. And but what really defines it? I'm trying to find a really good trigger, because those decisions are all kind of what people call star sense, of just like, I just sense this, so I'm just going to do it. And I would even cut like a medevac to get a second starport up faster to get Banshees. Why you cut 1 medevac? Because 1 medevac costs 100 gas, and it takes 100 gas to make a starport. Really easy. But that would be my only response to get another starport if they're not going Colossus. To get that Banshee and just start poking around. Getting Cloak, It's kind of how you feel and depending on map positioning. What can also be really effective with Banshees, which I talked about in the TVP overview, so I don't want to talk about it too much more, is you can use the Banshees with Cloak to force them to have observers following your Banshees, in which then they're going to have fewer observers over your main army or wherever. And that's all I'm going to say about that. So hopefully that answered your questions. That's what I do. Other people may do different things. I just don't see a need to really get a second starport up. Unless like I lost all of my medevacs to like a really bad blink, then I might want to try to play catch up. But that's so situational, it's harder to find. Other than how I just defined it.